Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Lunch and Learn. We're excited about uh, our session today. We do have good afternoon, Heather Claw, Deputy Attorney General, Kiani Borfer-Klashchi'i, Todechini Janela, and Tutchini Chiche. I apologize. I always forget my introductions. I get too excited to jump into the episode. So today I'm excited. We have Miss Latanya Johnson from the AAG, from the HSG unit, which is Health and Social Services and Governments unit. We also have Veronica Blackhat joining us from the Natural Resources unit. So we'll go ahead and excited to get to know them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we can go ahead and start with our conversation. Latanya, let's start with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. She'el Latanya Johnson Yanishia, Mike Shkijni Nishla, Kia Ani Bashichi, Tosona HJ, Senepithe Ashanella, Dina Asa Nishla. Good afternoon. I'm Latanya Johnson. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. I am the Assistant Attorney General for the Human Services and Government Unit.
Thank you. Veronica?
Good afternoon. I'm Veronica Blackhat. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for the Natural Resources Unit.
Thank you. Well, great. Well, we're excited to have you guys here. So the past couple of weeks, we have introduced our Tax and Finance unit. Last week, we did the Tax and Finance unit and the our ECDU, which is our Economic Development Unit, with Mel and Catherine. The week prior to that, we had the opportunity to sit down and meet with Paul and Rod from our litigation unit and our chapter unit. So this week, we're going to be highlighting our natural resources and HSGU unit. I want to be able to go ahead and have an opportunity to introduce them, you guys' background. So if you guys don't mind, could you share a little bit of your background and where you're from?
Sure. This is Latanya. I am originally from Window Rock, here in Window Rock, Arizona. My family is also from Wheatfields, Arizona. I grew up here on the Navajo Nation. I went to high school at St. Michael's Indian School. I went to undergrad at the University of Arizona, and I majored in political science. I also attended law school at Arizona State University College of Law.
Hi, I'm originally from Newcomb, New Mexico. All my family reside there. I graduated high school from Newcomb, and my undergrad, I graduated from Eastern New Mexico University, and I graduated from law school. I attended law school at the University of Wisconsin School of Law.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. How fun. Okay, so what we're wanting to do in this project is, in this program, is to also kind of encourage the young Navajo or anybody who are interested in coming into law school. What actually guided your career to law school? And was there anything that happened, or just your thoughts or situations that just, when you decided to go to law school? Veronica, let's go ahead and start with you.
I think for me, well, my undergrad degree, I graduated, my major was sociology. So I think there was always that, for me, it was like the need to assist people. So I think the decision to go to law school was kind of, the next step for me, as a way to somehow give back to the nation or assist people with any, issues that, they had or whatever. I mean, and just being surrounded by people from different backgrounds. And, I think that kind of opened my eyes, and I saw the need for representation. So I didn't decide on law school right away. It was more of a decision that came later, in undergrad. I think it was like maybe towards my last year when I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the next step? So, so that's when I decided that, I wanted to pursue law.
Thank you, Veronica. LaTanya, what prompted you to want to go to law school?
So when I was in high school, I wanted to be an attorney, but there was really at that point, I had no really reason as to why I wanted to be an attorney. I just knew that I wanted to go to law school. It wasn't until I was in college at the University of Arizona. And when I was at the University of Arizona, it was very important for me to participate in internships. So I did my best to research what type of intern opportunities that were available for college students, specifically Native American students. So my sophomore year, between my freshman and my sophomore year, I did an internship at Pima County office in Tucson, and I was able to meet some workers. And during that time, I was able to experience that even in Tucson, which has a large number of tribes located in the Tucson area and just within the state of Arizona, they were also not familiar with tribes and just tribal governments as well. The next summer, I was able to find another internship. I believe it was through University of Kansas, and we were placed in the DC area and working with Department of Interior. So I was placed with the Bureau of Land Management in Virginia, and I work with the BLM staff on various issues. Like my experience with Pima County, I also found out that a lot of people don't know that there's Native people. They also don't know about tribal government, even at the BLM level, the federal official and federal agency level. And I was able to provide, some brief background on the Navajo Nation and the Navajo people during that time. So I felt like Veronica, that there wasn't enough representation. So the following summer, I also applied for another internship through the Morris K. Udall Foundation. And I was selected, and along with other Native students throughout the United States. And we were placed at different federal agencies, Congress, and the White House. And through that internship, I worked in the White House General Counsel's office, and the interns there worked with judicial nominees. At that point, I really didn't know the concept of judicial nominees. Now, as an attorney, knowing what's going on in the state of the presidential candidates, the U.S. presidential candidates, what the judicial nominees are now. I wish at that point it was more in perspective. But at those experiences through my Morris K. Udall internship, I also experienced that there were a number of individuals who didn't know the Navajo Nation and Navajo people, and I felt like it was very important for not just me, but other individuals to represent not just the Navajo Nation, but other tribes and their interests, and ensuring that sovereignty is upheld. So because of all my experiences, I felt that law school would help me accomplish my goal and able to represent the Navajo Nation and other Indian tribes.
Well, LaTanya, it sounds like you had an opportunity to participate in a lot of internships. And Veronica, well, this question goes to both of you guys. I know I met LaTanya over at the PLSI Summer Law Institute. Was there other prep courses that you guys took? Veronica?
I didn't take any prep courses. I mean, the bulk of preparation in terms of law school did come through PLSI. I just happened after I graduated from undergrad, I spent a year substitute teaching at the high school and was just trying to figure out, the next step. And I learned about that program and applied and, was accepted. So that was my first, I guess, real look into, how law school would be. So I think that really prepared me in terms of what to expect, and kind of gave me a better sense of, what I was getting into. And it was nice in the sense that there were other Native American students there who were also pursuing law. So that was a good experience for me. But aside from that, I really didn't do any prepping for law school.
I think you're absolutely right. I know my experience with PLSI was just a wonderful experience. Had an opportunity for me, not growing up on the reservation, to go ahead and interact with other Native people that have the same like-minded goals or wanting to go ahead and pursue law. So I know that it was, I definitely enjoyed my time there as well. LaTanya, you mentioned that you went to the UDAL, and we know that you went to PLSI. Maybe share a little bit about the experience of you going through the PLSI program and what helped you, and maybe some encouragement that what you would give to other people maybe thinking of taking that, or other pipeline programs.
Sure. So I thankfully, after I finished college, I was able to meet some other attorneys. And when I was able to speak to them, they were the ones who brought PLSI to my attention. At that point, I wasn't really aware of it. And PLSI stands for Pre-Law Summer Institute. And that's through the American Indian Law Center. And PLSI is held at the University of New Mexico College of Law. So thankfully I was able to apply for that. And at that point, PLSI, at least the time that we participated in PLSI, which was a number of years ago. I believe it was 22 years ago.
You don't even want to know when I was there. It's a long time ago.
At that time, the Navajo Nation Scholarship Office was able to provide some scholarship funds in order for me, and I believe other Navajo students who were participating in PLSI, to attend that program. So just a little side note for those college students who are wanting to go to law school, I would recommend that they contact the scholarship office to find out if they do continue to provide scholarship opportunities for individuals who want to attend PLSI, just for informational purposes.
Or any other pipeline programs, I'm assuming.
Yes, correct. And so thankfully I was able to get into PLSI. And PLSI, for those who are not aware, there's 4 classes, at least when we attended. At that time, we took property, federal Indian law, torts, and a writing advocacy class. And at the end of the summer, the students are divided into one side and the other side, and there's an oral argument. And I believe the time that we attended PLSI, it was regarding a question related to the Office of Labor Relations, the National Labor Relations Board. So it was like Veronica and Heather experienced. It was great to meet other Native students who wanted to go to law school, and like them, we all had the same goal of wanting to represent Native tribes and ensuring the best interest for the tribes. But I gotta admit, it was a very intense summer. It wasn't easy. It was unlike anything in college or any other experience I had. It was a very difficult summer. It was a lot of reading and writing and dedication to the studies, which is very reflective of law school. So I'm sure Heather and Veronica experienced that. We had very supportive family and friends who supported our goals. But it was a very difficult summer, and I'm not going to, I don't want to sugarcoat the situation, but I also want everyone to know that they can take on this challenge and take on all the studying that needs to be done. But I believe that PLSI is a good experience, and it helps you get ready for law school. The other pipeline program that I'm aware of, which wasn't available when I was applying for law school, and I believe it has been recently available within the last couple of years, is Arizona State University Indian Legal Program now has a pipeline to law school. And I believe they coordinate with other law schools. So they have a number of students. I believe it's a 1 or 2 week program, and they provide assistance to students who for the LSAT, which is the law school admission tests, and other services. So I would recommend going to the ASU Indian Legal Programs website to obtain more information, but it's held every summer. I believe it's around June or July for those students who have yet to get into law school but want to go to law school. And I believe that's a really good opportunity for students who to take on those type of programs. So I just, I think for law school, not just for law school, but in college, there's just a number of programs for Native students to participate, because I think, for at least in my experience, I think experience is very important. Obviously the education, the degree is very invaluable, but it's also the experience portion of it that I recommend taking more opportunity.
I would 100% agree, because I think when I was applying for or doing my undergrad, I was kind of one of those that was kind of flopping everywhere. But I think if I had to do it all again, I think I would definitely look into some of those programs. I think it just brings so much real life experience that you can go ahead and have a better understanding. And like you, when you're going through those programs, it's good to have a good just introduction. But then when you go to law school, once you go through your programs, you can think back on that and you actually learn more, because you're like, oh, now I understand what that experience is at DC. Because I did an internship at Office of Tribal Government, Office of Tribal Justice at Department of Justice. And when I go through some of my experiences now, I think, oh, that makes better sense to me now, years later. So I would 100% agree. Take advantage of programs and internships even before you go into law school. Veronica, I wanted to ask you. You said you went to Washington Law School. What?
Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. I'm sorry. What actually made your decision to go?
Well, it kind of all came as a result of PLSI, and I don't know how they do it now, but at the time when I attended, we used to have visits from different universities trying to recruit students, and during that time there was, I want to say like maybe a whole group, like 7 to 8 students that ended up going to Wisconsin. So it was kind of a last minute decision, and I mean, so last minute that I said I would attend, and I didn't even have like a place to live. I was literally just living out of my suitcase for like the first couple of weeks until I found a place. But I think it was a good experience, for me, being away from home, totally different environment, dealing with different tribes. And, I think, that whole process, I thought was really, really well. And I do like, they did offer me in-state tuition. So I think that was what really helped me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any scholarships from the nation, but I did get scholarships during my undergrad.
And I'm glad that we brought that up, because along with these pipelines, that happens if they're working with other law schools. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you end up in a different place than you thought you were going to be at. I know during our class, we had a couple of students actually go to Columbia Law School, with the recruiting that the law schools do. So, okay, that's how you ended up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, because prior to that, I was actually looking at ASU, mm-hmm. and I had visited the university and did my little tour, all of that. And then went through PLSI. Then I was like, okay, well, this is different. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you had an opportunity to be there with a bunch of people that you already went through the program with, because I think mm-hmm. that actually makes your experience so much more, I don't want to use the word tolerable, but tolerable and enjoyable, because mm-hmm. they're all going through.
Yeah. So at least, I mean, I knew people going into the program, and it wasn't like I didn't know anyone, you know what I mean? It was a good experience.
And I think that's kind of the same experience I think LaTanya and I did, because we did PLSI and then we ended up going to ASU, and there was a whole group of us that went there. And then from ASU, there was still like a whole, maybe like about 6 attorneys that actually got hired onto the Navajo Nation Department of Justice at that time. And me not living on the reservation, I'm very familiar with my family's homestead, Upper Fruitland, Shiprock area, but I've never actually lived on my own here on the reservation. So having my colleagues come with me and to be able to get to know and introduce to Window Rock and living on the reservation with them just was, it lessened the because I didn't have like my immediate family on the reservation. So the homesickness, it just seemed like home and comfort. So definitely appreciate that. So now that we talked about the Navajo Nation, let's go ahead and move on. What guided you guys or led you to work for the Navajo Nation? LaTanya?
Heather, before we go on to the next topic, I wanted to talk about scholarship. As Veronica had mentioned the scholarship. I do want to note for those who obviously law school and other professional degrees, tuition is expensive. But I do want to note that the Navajo Nation does have an agreement with ASU Law School, University of Arizona, and UNM Law School to provide scholarships for those individuals who are attending those law schools. I would recommend contacting the Navajo Nation Scholarship Office to find out what amount is provided. But that scholarship was very helpful for me, and I'm sure other Navajo students who attended ASU with me, because I was able to graduate with little to no loans following law school. So I really, would recommend taking the opportunity. I know this is the law school area, but also the nation has an agreement with the University of Arizona for the veterinary program and the medical program as well. So definitely take, there's a lot of scholarships out there, along with the new program. Oh gosh, my friend who is in a PhD program is always talking about this program. Now I can't remember. It used to be the American Indian Law Center, but they transitioned to a new program. So definitely, please reach out and, find more scholarship opportunities. So, that we don't have that graduate debt free.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that education is expensive, and it's getting more and more expensive. So I'm kind of glad that we graduated way back then. So LaTanya, let's go ahead. Like I said, going from law school, going through our law school and then graduating, what was your decision to come and work for the Navajo Nation?
So my decision to work for the Navajo Nation stems from what I had previously mentioned regarding my experience in college and participating in those internships. It is important for me, for others to know about the Navajo Nation and its government structure and the fact that we have our own laws and policies and that the Navajo Nation is self-governed and able to do what it needs to do on behalf of our Navajo people. So that was my whole reason for working for the Navajo Nation.
Okay, and that was your whole plan the whole time?
Yes. Well, to work for the Navajo Nation or another Indian tribe or any type of entities that promote tribal interests.
Veronica, same question to you.
Honestly, when I graduated from law school and I didn't have a clue as to what my next steps were going to be, I was studying for the bar. And then I can't remember how it happened. No, it was during Fed Bar, I think it was, is when I found out that, they were looking to hire attorneys. And I had just had my son and, was at Fed Bar visiting with my former classmates and just happened to do my interview right then and there and was notified that, they were going to hire. So I was like, oh, great, this is fun. But I think in the back of my mind, I always had an interest to come back to Navajo. As I mentioned, I did get scholarships in undergrad. And, in my mind, this was kind of my way of giving back and providing service to the nation. So it was a bit of a struggle initially, but I think, once everything fell into place, it was a good experience for me. When I first started, there were hardly any female Native attorneys working for Navajo. And when I started with NRU, it was predominantly male. So that was an interesting experience for me. But, seeing the growth of DOJ over time and how we have more and more female Native attorneys, I think is really great, which is very different than the experience I had first coming in to work for the nation.
Is that the struggle that you mentioned? You said it was
Yeah.
a struggle at first.
Yeah, it was a struggle at first. And I just was kind of assigned my area, and I didn't really get guidance, I think, from the beginning. But I think it was maybe a year or two after there was another female attorney that was hired. So that kind of helped a little bit. So, but it was a struggle in the sense that I felt like I had to figure out stuff on my own, and maybe, felt intimidated asking for help, but it's gotten better over time, I think.
And I think it's great. I think the ratio of women at Department of Justice is, I think we're on the high end. So that's exciting. It's kind of good to hear that from when you started to know where we are right now. I think that's provides a wonderful understanding of where Native and Navajo women in particular are moving towards the legal field and being able to go ahead and fill those shoes and accomplish it very well and successfully. So thank you for that. LaTanya, what was your road to the Department of Justice?
Oh, as I mentioned earlier, it was based on my experience in college and wanting to represent the Navajo Nation or other Indian tribes or entities that provide the best interest for tribal nations.
So why did you choose the Navajo Nation then? Because you mentioned that it was any tribe, and in particular Department of Justice. Because
I'm Navajo, and that's where I'm from. That's who I am as a Navajo woman. What's that?
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
When someone asks me who I am, I'm a Navajo first, and then I'm a woman. And as a Navajo woman, I want to be able to represent the Navajo Nation. And it's very general to say represent the Navajo Nation and its laws and its position, but it really does come down to it. There's many facets of the Navajo Nation, from economic development to natural resources to law enforcement. The Navajo Nation is a very large government structure. It's just a very good, it's good to advocate for the best interest of the Navajo Nation, because ultimately we're serving our Navajo people.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to real quick add that I did intern after my first year of law school at DOJ. So I did that after my first year. And then my second year, I did do some work with DNA Legal Services out in Crown Point. So I think, I knew I wanted to come back to the nation in some capacity. So that's kind of what led to my decision to come and work for Navajo.
Yeah, I think the follow-up question that I wanted to ask you, LaTanya, was you mentioned that you grew up here in Window Rock, and coming back as an attorney here in your home region. Can you share a little bit or expand a little bit on your experience with that?
Well, interestingly enough, growing up, no one, even in like elementary, high school, no one really, my teachers or family really shared about what the Navajo Nation is, what a government is, and about its laws and its policies. So it wasn't until I got into college that it all came into place. So like I used to go with my mom to different functions, and I didn't realize why I was there. And my mom used to be a big ZAW supporter, and I believe she volunteered on his campaign. And I didn't realize that I tagged along with my mom and didn't realize about all of that until later in life. And I wish I knew more about that. So to me, Window Rock wasn't the government. It's not when I was growing up, Window Rock wasn't the law, wasn't politics, it wasn't the government. Window Rock was home. It was where I grew up. My family's here. I went to high school here, and of course, my family's from Wheatfields. The Navajo Nation is home to me. So it's not necessary. So coming back here, it's different. And I don't want to say it's different in the fact that it's bad. It's different because now I'm here for work, and for work purposes. So now I see a different part of Window Rock, and it now represents part of it being work, and the work that I assist the Navajo Nation on.
I agree. And I think we have a quote of the day, because I'm a Navajo woman, period. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I know I've definitely enjoyed working, because Veronica, you were here, and then when we got hired onto the Department of Justice. So I think for me, I agree with you. I mean, my experience with the Department of Justice, I felt like I had so much more mentorship. That's what I missed when I actually left to work for the judicial for a little bit, because we had you could go next door and you could talk to an attorney, and you could, talk these things out. So when I went to the judicial, yes, there's a phone call and there was other attorneys, but it's not the same when they're just right next door to you, especially when you're just learning how to be an attorney, I guess. So, and you were a part of that with me and LaTanya coming on, and our group coming on with that, having you guys there. You and I can't think of the other young lady's name. She was just so wonderful. I think she ended up going to a different tribe, or she wasn't Navajo, but she went to another tribe. Anyways, both of you, I remember sitting down, and just at one point I had a conversation, and you guys were really open, because I was at odd with you guys being Native or Navajo women or Native women working here. So definitely appreciate your guys' welcoming when we came in. That meant a lot to me coming in. So now that we're here at the Navajo Nation, I wanted to ask you guys, had a wonderful and continue to have a wonderful career here and helping out the Navajo Nation in all aspects. My curious question is, what initiatives or projects or cases that had meant the most, that had been affected you or meant the most to you during your professional legal career here? And it could be a success and it could be a failure, because I think both of those help promote us in our education and our experience, and in how we want to go ahead and be in our future. Is there a particular situation or a project that you guys worked on that just kind of highlights in your mind? And I'm going to start with LaTanya for this one.
So everything we do here at DOJ is great, right?
Another quote of the day.
It's great. Honestly, I do want to highlight that, everything we do, there's a reason why we do it. And even reviewing a contract is important, because that contract provides a service to our client, and our client's providing a service to the Navajo people. So, I think that it's important to highlight that, even the non-sexy work, if you will, is very important, because a lot of us, that's a lot of transactional work that we do. But one of the things that comes to my mind is for those who are not aware that we have a law, the federal law referred to as the Indian Child Welfare Act. And the purpose of the Indian Child Welfare Act was enacted in 1978 because the federal government was taking away our Native children away from their families for unwarranted reasons, probably because the family was in poverty, and it wasn't necessarily due to neglect or abuse. So the Congress approved the Indian Child Welfare Act, and now that applies across the board to the throughout the states. Couple of years ago, there were some foster parents who appealed it all the way to the United States Supreme Court and argued that ICWA was unconstitutional. And what does that mean? What does that mean if ICWA was unconstitutional? It wouldn't allow our Native children, specifically our Navajo children in our case, to be placed with their relatives. It's important for our relatives and their families to provide that cultural importance to our Navajo children, Native children. So, and that's a case called the Brackeen case. Brackeen case that went to the United States Supreme Court. But before the decision came down from the U.S. Supreme Court, there were a number of states that were enacting state ICWA laws. And when I came to HSGU, the state of New Mexico was doing that. So obviously there's a number of Indian tribes in the state of New Mexico, not the Navajo Nation. But I do want to highlight on the fact that the Navajo Nation is very different than a lot of other tribes. We're different in land base. We're different in the population, our government structure, et cetera, et cetera. So, while states or federal government tend to group tribes all in together, it's important to note that the Navajo Nation is very different from other tribes. So whenever we go into these negotiation meetings, obviously we're there for the best interest of the tribe, but we're also, as a Navajo Nation attorney, we're there to represent the Navajo Nation and our interests. And sometimes they may not align with the other Indian tribes for various reasons. But going back to the New Mexico ICWA, we received a version that was not in the best interest of the Navajo Nation, our Navajo children, and our Navajo families. But there were some other tribes who were supportive of that proposed version. And my former colleague, Desiree, and I, we fought to ensure that version, the initial version, was not the version that we would move forward with. We were able to get other tribes on board with us, and we got it to a version that we were comfortable with. Unfortunately, the legislative session didn't pass because it ran out of time. But the next session, it did pass, and that version is consistent with federal ICWA. So to me, that was a win, because not only was it a win to get a state ICWA bill, but it was a win because the version that was initially brought to us was not in anybody's best interests. And if it wasn't for us and the ICWA program, the Division of Social Services, which now referred to as Division of Children and Family Services, and other our former President Nez and the 24th Council during that time, we were able to advocate for a bill that was consistent with federal ICWA, which is what we wanted. Now there are other states who are moving forward, like Utah and Colorado. Utah did one 2 years ago, and thankfully the 25th Council and President Niger advocated for a Utah bill that was consistent with federal ICWA in the best interest of our tribes. So through the advocacy and assistance and education, we were able to get a New Mexico ICWA bill, and ensuring that there's no modifications to those bills that are not inconsistent with the best interests of the Navajo Nation, Navajo people, and our Navajo children.
I think that's with the ICWA, especially with ICWA, I think, it might be a little bit more subjective, and is that I think the best person to start arguing for those particular cases is a mom, because you have an understanding of what you really want for your children. Not to say that the male or the men can't argue, but I think there's so much more power that I think women have when you talk about the nurturing situation or aspect, the teaching aspect, because and that's basically my opinion. Is so I'm glad that you were there, Latanya, in order to go ahead and advocate for the Navajo Nation, because you're not only advocating as for the Navajo Nation, but you're also advocating as a mother's perspective, and I think that's so powerful. So I appreciate that experience that you handled. And I know when the Supreme Court upheld ICWA, I mean, I saw your social post, and I could definitely feel your excitement, just because I know that your hands are in that and your heart's in that too as well. So thank you for that, Latanya. Veronica, what about you?
Well, I can't really think of any one thing in particular, but like Latanya was saying, all the work that we do is important, and I think one of the things that I think I'm very proud of is assisting our clients in streamlining processes to make things a little bit easier. And then also with natural resources, our unit deals with everything related to natural resources, the land, forests, all of that. So I think for me, it's more behind the scenes negotiating to make sure that the nation gets the best deal in terms of its resources. So that may mean leases or rights of way, and then more recently is just the work that we've done with FERC and the all the energy projects that are coming up. And this is a new area, but getting FERC to issue a decision that would honor tribes' decision with respect to whether they want a project in their area or not. Because prior to that, FERC used to just issue preliminary permits without consulting with tribes. But now, they've taken a step back and, are interested in, are deferring to tribes and encouraging, companies to work with tribes in developing or making sure that the tribe is okay with any particular project before they will approve any additional permits.
I mean, I think that's definitely huge. Latanya, let me go ahead and get your comment first before.
I just wanted to highlight what Veronica noted. A lot of people don't see all the work that's done. I don't want to say behind the scenes, but the work that's not seen in the public. And that's important. That's just not for DOJ. It's for the president, for the council, and the divisions, all the work that goes behind doing something. Perfect example is the water settlements. Like, no one sees all the writing, the verbal and written negotiations, all the education sessions that were done. There's a lot of work that goes behind all of those particular issues, those big major issues. But so I just wanted to highlight, all the work behind that goes into getting a final product. And no one sees all that work unless you're in the trenches of doing all that work.
Thank you for highlighting that, Latanya, because that is so true. And I would like to go back to what you were talking about with FERC, Veronica. That's huge. A federal agency actually deferring to a tribal sovereignty or tribal's input. We've had so much more interest, so much more situations where the federal government doesn't even take the consideration of those. So with this particular FERC, what was the acronym? We are so used to acronyms. Federal
Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah, thank you. Federal. I think it's huge, especially for natural resources. I mean, the Navajo Nation was built fortunately and unfortunately, because of energy. They wanted to extract our natural resources. And so to have that same committee actually recognizing tribes in what projects that are they're saying, and what direction and their priority there is good. So I definitely appreciate you highlighting that, because I think that is something that we need to remember. And it gives us encouragement, at least gives me encouragement. I'm sure you guys too, when we have these wins on the federal level. And to be a part of it, I think that's part of why we became advocates for our tribes and our nation. Not, I mean, I think that definitely encompasses. Latanya is so good at quotes of the day. I really am going to start using, because I'm Navajo, because I'm a Navajo woman. And that's absolutely true with that. And I think we talked a little bit about your guys' past projects and what they mean to you. But what are the most important issues in your guys' units at this time? If you can share a little bit of that. Veronica, let's go ahead and start with you on that.
I think for NRU as a whole, energy, anything related to energy, I mean, that seems to be the big thing right now. So solar, wind, hydro pump storage. So, I mean, those are the big legal issues. Oh, and carbon, hydrogen, all of those things are big issues right now for the unit. And then, of course, the more like uranium, the regulatory stuff, that's kind of a big issue for NRU right now. So
the big stuff on there, absolutely. I think the energy, I have to agree with you on that. I think we're in a cusp of taking more control about our natural resources and have more of a say of what projects that we're wanting to move forward. So I have to agree with you. And I think, to me, that's exciting. That's really exciting, because we're actually being able to have a little bit more decision making and about our own natural resources. Latanya, what is your unit of HSGU?
So Human Services Government Unit provides legal assistance to a number of divisions and subject matters, such as law enforcement, social services, education, general services, 638 contracts, etc. So it's a large unit that has a number of attorneys. We have 6 attorneys, 2 tribal court advocates, who provide legal assistance to the Navajo Nation government on various matters. And there's, obviously all of them work on very important issues, from ensuring that the child support payments are paid out, ensuring that that our public safety officers are, being protected with respect to insurance and federal Tort Claims Act issues. There's just a number of issues that are very important that the attorneys and advocates work on here at HSGU. But I guess to highlight, I think one of the important issues is 638 contracts, which are pursuant to the Indian Self-Determination Act. And the ISDIEA provide, the whole purpose of it is to allow tribes to be self-govern. And I think that's really important for us, for the Navajo Nation, is to focus on that self-governance, to allow the Navajo Nation to carry out those services, whether that's law enforcement, corrections. I believe also the Natural Resources Unit handles their clients get 638 funds as well. So there's just a number of programs that receive 638 funds, but it's really important to highlight that self-governance in ensuring that the Navajo Nation carry out these services on behalf of our Navajo people. So that's one thing that I do want to highlight that HSGU does.
Well, thank you. I know those, especially HSGU and natural resources, there's just still so much. It almost seems like once you finish something, you're like, okay, we need to improve on something else. So everything's always continuous. So where do you guys see your units in about 5 years? What are some of your goals within your units, and where do you see them in the next 5 years? Latanya?
Sure. So, it's important for, just not the unit, but for the nation to be proactive. There are a number of goals that, the nation wants to set. And that may not just be within the Navajo Nation, but it may be internally within the Navajo Nation. I think one of the issues that we normally deal with is contract review. I had mentioned that earlier is, we review a number of contracts that provide services to the Navajo Nation government. And so there are times where we have to negotiate those contract provisions. And one of them is insurance. We want to ensure that the liability of the nation, there's absolutely no liability for the nation or reduce liability. So, my colleague is an active, discussion of ensuring that, we have other provisions, in the event there's a contractor who wants to amend our insurance provisions. So not only does it allow the nation to be able to reduce or have no liability, but it also streamlines the negotiation time so the contract can get out the door faster. So that, that's something that, we're actively working on moving forward. Another area that one of my colleagues are working on with their clients is child support. With child support enforcement, there are situations where there are individuals who are not paying their child support. What can be done to ensure those parents are paying their child support to the custodial parent who is, providing for the child? So, they're actively working to ensure that there's more enforcement mechanism to ensure that there's individuals who are paying their child support.
And then, we do have a weekly Assistant Attorney General's meeting, and in that meeting, I'm always impressed about the number of child support cases that we go through. And I think what you reported was over 50 that we did this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's just through Office of Hearing and Appeals. That doesn't include the district courts. Yeah. So, there's two ways, the mechanisms in which custodial parents could get child support. But the numbers that I do report, it's just with the Office of Hearing and Appeals, where parents could also go to the district court and also receive child support through the district court, the nomination district courts.
Great. Thank you, LaTanya, for your leadership in your unit. Veronica, where do you see your unit in 5 years?
I agree with LaTanya in the sense that, we are working to be more proactive. And for me, at least, for the unit is trying to build up capacity in-house and then, in-house expertise. For a while we were understaffed. So I'm finally at a point where we pretty much have all the positions filled, and then, trying to build the in-house expertise on, the areas that we work in. We do have several attorneys who are very proactive and are always thinking of next steps and, ways to make things better. Just, like I said, building in-house capacity so we don't rely so much on outside counsel. I think that's one area that I've been trying to focus more on and trying to educate staff in terms of, the processes and how we can do things more efficiently. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, 5-10 years from now, I'm hoping that we'll still continue to be fully staffed and that we'll have more people who are more knowledgeable in, the areas that they work in. So it's a wide range. We advise EPA, so there's water, air, and then of course we do work on uranium stuff, and then forestry. So there's like a wide range of areas that we work with, and just building that capacity to be able to provide guidance to our clients.
Well, thank you for that. And geez, like the hour always goes by so fast. And so I wanted to go ahead and allow you guys a few your closing remarks on there. LaTanya?
Sure. So one of the, I really, for those who are interested in law school, I do really want, and not just in law school, in college, our Navajo students who want to obtain a higher education is to seek out those internships, externships, fellowships to gain that practical experience. And that will allow you to build your resume, meet contacts who will be able to provide that letter of recommendation for you in order to provide, that mentorship, or even provide that oversight and assistance when you are applying for a professional degree. So it just doesn't apply to law school, but applies to any, maybe a master's, a doctoral program, etc. So it's always important to, take advantage of those, and also seeking scholarships, because, whatever area that you all go into, you will be able to represent, not just yourself, but your family and the Navajo Nation.
Yes, thank you. Veronica.
I agree with everything LaTanya said. I mean, I think, just to take advantage of as many opportunities that are available, just doing the research and just putting yourself out there, and, gain as much experience as you can, practical experience, and just talking to people. I mean, if you know people who are, in law or whatever, and you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. So yeah, just to take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank both of you for sharing and taking this opportunity to share a little bit about you, because I know both of you are a little bit kind of shy on certain levels. So I know this was a little more difficult for you, but you guys did such a wonderful job, and you guys do a wonderful job every day. I'm always so appreciative to be able to work with attorneys, especially Navajo attorneys of your guys' caliber. And I know, like I've expressed before, when this opportunity to be make a decision to be the Deputy Attorney General of the Department of Justice, it was scary, thought and opportunity. But when I really thought about it, I was like, you know what? Department of Justice has a huge, secure, steadfast base within the managing attorneys, that it's just, continuing to work and letting you guys do the work that you need. But I also appreciate your guys' openness to go ahead and say, hey, when I come to you guys and say, hey, can you relook at this? What is this going on? Help me doing this. You guys are always so open and willing to help me understand what that situation really entails. But you're also willing to go ahead and move forward and think beyond that when I ask you guys to do that, when the Attorney General and myself ask you, or Navajo leaders. So thank you guys again. It's such a pleasure to be here at Department of Justice with the both of you. So I appreciate all of you guys who came in to view. Again, that this concludes our episodes of introduction of our Assistant Attorney Generals, and we will be coming up with a new subject matter within the next October too as well. So everybody have a wonderful weekend, be safe, and we will see you next week. Bye.